my view, no building should just be transported or imported from some other place. It should grow out of the organic soil, out of the earth. First of all, Daniel Libeskind is a Polish citizen. I'm from Poland. I was born here. I was reared here. My culture is basically Polish culture, Polish Jewish culture. I was brought up on the music of Chopin. I was brought up on Moniuszko, on Pantadeusz, on Polish painting, on Polish culture. And I grew up in Łódź, not far from Warsaw, but to us, Warsaw, on our monthly or bi-monthly trip to see my mother's cousin in Warsaw. This was our big trip. And I remember standing on the site with my sister. We have even a photograph, standing in front of this huge palace which dominated the city. And the city, even though it was a beautiful city for us kids, it was always dominated by the shadows of communism. No doubt about it. The conformity, the grayness, oppression that people felt, and we too, even as kids. So coming back to Warsaw here, wow, a place of freedom, a place of imagination, really the center of Europe. To build Złota, that's an amazing circle. Who would have known that I would come back after so many years to build this fantastic building exactly around the street where my mother lived? You know, the old Hasidic neighborhood, just around Twarda, and to build a building that has the emotion of Poland. It's not just a building from somewhere else. It's about this soil, this city, which is such a beautiful city, has suffered through history and yet has come out, resurrected in a way that no one could have ever imagined. That to me is the inspiration of the building. And I think Złota is not only an iconic building, but it sets a new standard for living, a new standard of how a large building can be a smart building, can be a contextual building, can be a building that is also symbolic, you know, the free flight of the eagle in the skies of Warsaw. Those are the things that inspired me, and those are the things that I think people will see. Even if they're not lucky enough to live here, they can take a train, they can walk on the streets, they can see it from different angles, and they can see that it speaks to them. It's a building full of emotion, and that's what inspired me also. I think this building, even before it is completed, before people have actually moved in, has already changed the way people look at Warsaw, at Poland. It has changed it in the following way. First of all, it shows that there is something beyond this monument of a previous era in which Poland was in a different state, in a kind of shadow of itself. It's a building for people. It has changed the skyline of Warsaw, and it is really a sustainable ecological building. That too is something perhaps you cannot see immediately on looking at it, but the shaping of the building, which is a sculptural, highly sculptural form, is not just an extruded box, but it is a shape that takes advantage of the beauty, which is really the panorama of Warsaw. I've often thought that architecture very often is thought to be an abstract art. Infrastructure, metal, steel, concrete, windows. Sometimes people think about it like about a commercial product, a car, you know, a washing machine, a big engine. But that's not architecture. Architecture is a cultural entity. It has to communicate a story. It's in the story of the city, in the story of what the city is. There's also a spirit of the city. And I think without that emotional connection, and what is the story of Warsaw? What is the story of this building? You can see it in the way the building rises, in the way it's shaped, in the way it opens Warsaw in a very different way from just a block. And therefore, it's a story of the future also. It's not just a story of the past. We know today that we cannot just increase the carbon footprint. We can't just add to the ecological disasters by building buildings that have really no thought about longevity of a building, robustness of a building, the power and the economy of energy in a building. So it's easy enough to make a glass facade and let it go at that. But we have to take account of heat, of temperature, of what is the best environment for people who live in a building, and use smart technologies in order to minimize the negative effect of big buildings. Now this building, and I think generally buildings that are smartly built, add to the coherence of a city in our time because they create a high density in the center of the city where you don't need a car, you have public transport, where you can walk to all the facilities, where you have all the great cultural and fun things to do in the evening. So a sustainable city is a city of high density in my view. And to build a sustainable high density building requires different new technologies. Technologies which probably were not even available when I started working on this building. But of course the panelization of the building, the character of glazing of the building is closely designed with the ideal conditions to minimize the carbon footprint and maximize the pleasures and maximize the energy, positive energy of the building. And in general, the patterning of the glazing and the paneling of the building is also an aesthetic means to make the building have a scale that is very human, reduce it to the human scale. Such big buildings often have an anonymous scale. When you look at the patterning of this building, you see the individual aspect that enlivens and complexifies the notion of the size of the tower. So it's a large tower, but it has a very much a human scale. In a building of this sort, it's not just a building to live in, it's a community. It's about people spending their time here. So amenities are not an extra, it's not a footnote added to the building. But having a 25-meter pool is certainly part of a healthy lifestyle. Having the ability to have a place where kids can play, a cinema, a place to meet friends, a place to store one's wine. So the amenities are not conceived just as an abstract facilities or function, but really to affirm that the building is a community of people. It's about life. I think Złota definitely sets a new standard for what a residential building is in Warsaw, in Poland. And not only that it is well built, not only that it has high-tech, smart technology in the building, not only that it has infrastructure that is really working into the future, but the very respect for the individual. The fact that the building is not just produced out of a formula. In my view, no building should just be transported or imported from some other place. It should grow out of the organic soil, out of the earth where Złota stands, and into the sky, which is over Złota, and with these fantastic horizons developing around it. How inspiring is it to be back here with an unprecedented project like Złota 44.